Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining us. It is our weekend edition and really kicking off the Memorial Day weekend. Memorial Day goes all the way back to 1891 when Benjamin Harrison declared what was called Decoration Day, and a number of presidents for many years actually honored the dead. But then after World War II, Harry Truman actually created in 1948 Memorial Day as an appropriate occasion for Americans who had long been devoted to furthering peace, to reflect about the human losses resulting from the ravages of war. Lots of presidents have given great speeches on Memorial Day, but I think my all-time favorite comes from President Ronald Reagan. As the Cold War ended, Ronald Reagan asserted that any American who has ever listened to a bugler sound taps, whether it was halfway around the world or on a lonely tarmac stateside, knows why we set aside a special day each year to honor those who have died for our country and to pray for permanent peace. Well, as we talk about Memorial Day, we'll have to check in and find out whether or not our service men and women actually have religious liberty, and see whether or not we're providing the best possible health care to those in the veterans. And Penna Dexter and Kelly Shackelford, that'll give us something to talk about.
Well, I think it will. It's sort of stark relief with the scandal that's out there swirling around about the VA. Of course, President Obama used this as a campaign issue, promising to reform the VA. And he's been so distant and distracted, it seems, whenever he hits a crisis issue. And this has come out in recent days. And even the Congress has tried to deal with the fact that these waiting times are so long for the veterans, that people are dying waiting for health care. And, he's had several years to get moving on that and has not done so. And so it does sort of provide a good time to discuss and perhaps get some action on the issue as we celebrate Memorial Day.
Well, Memorial Day, a very special time for talking about those who pay the ultimate sacrifice and being concerned as well about the rights of veterans. Kelly Shackelford, of course, with us as well. Liberty Institute. It's been a while since we've all been in the same studio together, but I suspect you have a lot to share with us. But anything on the issue of veterans before we get into some of these other cases?
Well, I mean, I think, probably one of the first things I think of right now when it comes to, looking at Memorial Day is the memorials. And the memorials, our veterans memorials, are under attack right now. I mean, we have, at Liberty Institute, we have, it's either 5 or 6 current lawsuits where we're defending veterans memorials that are being attacked. Of course, the most noticeable that people are still aware of is the Mount Soledad Veterans Memorial outside of San Diego and La Jolla. And if people are anywhere near there, I would highly encourage them to go there. It's one of the most beautiful memorials we have in the country. Been there since 1956, and there's over 3,400 plaques to soldiers who've given sacrifice around that. And right now, there's a court order to tear down that memorial within 90 days. Now, we got to stay on that decision until we go through the Court of Appeals, but this shouldn't happen. We shouldn't be fighting over these. This should be kind of, they should stop attacking the veterans memorials because they don't like that there's a cross or a Star of David or some sort of religious symbol. So, yeah, I think it's really sad that at a time when, we're looking at Memorial Day, we actually have those memorials that are under attack in lawsuits by the ACLU and these type of groups.
You have to wonder how many actual veterans are upset about the crosses. I bet there aren't any.
Very, 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 very few. And I would encourage people, people who are out there and they listen and they think, this is something I care about. There's a way to connect to that. I mean, go and support those efforts. Go to Liberty Institute online and say, I want to do a donate button. I want to get behind these veterans cases on memorials. Support Call Point of View, or go online to pointofview.net and say, they actually bring these issues out in the public. I probably wouldn't hear about what was going on if it wasn't for Point of View. So, I think one thing people can do is connect themselves to the efforts. And instead of just going, gosh, I don't like what's going on, they can actually do something. They actually can be connected and make a difference. And so I encourage people to do that.
One question that comes up, Kelly, after there was a decision on religious liberty at the Supreme Court recently about prayer, does that translate into perhaps, if the Mount Soledad Cross case goes to the Supreme Court, a good decision on that, do you think?
Well, there's actually Washington Post wrote an article on that very aspect. They looked at the prayer opinion. And for those who don't remember the prayer opinion, what it essentially said is there was an attack to stop all the prayers before all the government meetings around the country. Well, the problem with that is when the justices looked at it, they said, the founders, when they passed the First Amendment that they're saying was violated, started with a prayer. So evidently they didn't think it was a problem, or they were schizophrenic or something, And so it was in the decision, the majority said, look, when you have something like this that's been a historical practice from the beginning, to say it's unconstitutional is just not going to work. Well, that argument does bring a lot of support for the veterans memorials because, of course, from the very beginning, there are religious symbols connected to our military. I mean, even today, you get one of the greatest awards you can get, the Navy Cross, right? There are crosses everywhere. You can't go into Arlington Memorial Cemetery. You can't go anywhere in any community. Every community of every state of this country, there's some sort of Memorial Day celebration. You cannot go to those places and not see religious symbols. So the idea, this is really embedded in our history. It goes all the way back. And so I do think that bodes well for the veterans memorials. But again, we're still having to fight these. And the last order on Mount Soledad is tear it down in 90 days.
Wow. If you would like some more information, our web link there to Liberty Institute will give you the links to some of the things that we've been talking about and will be talking about throughout the program today. But just before we take a break, I saw one article, and you know how there is some of these fake news stories like The Onion, where they're really fake. And I saw this one about an agency prohibiting 10 Commandments sign on private property, and I was sure this had to be a joke. Unfortunately, Kelly, it's not a joke, is it?
No, it's actually one of our newer cases. I think we had 3 big cases this week, and this was one of them, where the government has actually come and tried to tell somebody that they can't put a 10 Commandments sign on their own yard. Their private property. They can't, I mean, it's a big private property, and they've got this, this sign up to reflect their beliefs on the 10 Commandments, and the Department of Public Safety has told them, not only did they tell them they couldn't, but they said, well, I bet you wouldn't be complaining if they were putting up some Muslim phrase. So evidently they don't like the content either. So, but it's just crazy. But I mean, people have a right to speak on their own private property. This is evidently a new concept to some people in the government, but it really is true. And I think that's part of the reason that many of the people that went before us actually gave their life for the freedom of people to own their private property and to actually express themselves on their own private property. But we're now actually having to fight for that, unfortunately, in that case.
Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue our conversation about that. If you'd like to read about this and you think we're making this up, the first article there, No 10 Commandments on Private Property. You can see the sign, see whether it would be offensive to you. And we might as well open up the phones because the phones are already ringing. So if you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. Maybe you have some comments about veterans memorials. I suspect you do. We'll take those calls and continue our conversation right after this.
The Point of View Commentary with Kerby Anderson.
What happened to the word shame? Why aren't people ashamed of some of the things they do?
It's a good question. Columnist John Hawkins believes that there are things that we should be ashamed of doing. He deserves accolades not only for writing the column, but also for starting with a quote from Proverbs 6. Let me comment on a few things he mentions. 2 are cultural, 2 are political. First, people should be ashamed of acting like a skank in public. Now we can think of other words to describe the behavior of singers like Madonna or Miley Cyrus, but this word is good enough to illustrate the point. Young girls who follow the fun story of Hannah Montana are treated now to a young woman who has tossed every bit of that wholesome image. I feel for mothers trying to raise daughters in this cultural rot. Second, parents should be ashamed for allowing their children to inconvenience others. You certainly know what I mean if you fly on airplanes or walk in a mall or stand next to a checkout counter in a grocery store. Screaming children with temper tantrums are on the increase. Parents seem unwilling or unable to discipline their kids. Spoiled, selfish kids apparently are running these households. Lying politicians are a third group that should be ashamed. John Hawkins reminds us that politicians have lied to voters in the past. That is no new revelation. The difference is the willingness to consider routine lying to the American public as just part of the political spin that must take place. Another political issue is the entitlement mentality of so many on welfare. John Hawkins illustrates this from a scene in the movie Cinderella Man. I've mentioned this in previous commentaries. James Braddock is forced to get welfare to feed his family. He's humiliated by the experience and eventually goes back and pays the money he received. Today, many on welfare feel no shame in staying on the dole for a lifetime. We may have lost the idea of shame, but that doesn't mean there aren't things we should be ashamed about. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Weekend edition, Penna Dexter, Kelly Shackelford, almost all the lines filling up before we've even gotten to some of these issues. And I thought we'd get back just before we get into some of the other religious liberty cases. All three of us around the table had a chance to watch a very interesting and a fairly short video. We're going to play the audio from it, but it's a commentary by Clay Christensen, Professor Clay Christensen of Harvard Business School. I think it really makes a very profound case for why religion is important for the future of our republic.
Some time ago, I had a conversation with a Marxist economist from China. He was coming to the end of a Fulbright fellowship here in Boston. But I asked him if he had learned anything that was surprising or unexpected. And without any hesitation, he said, yeah. I had no idea how critical religion is to the functioning of democracy. The reason why democracy works, he said, is not because the government was designed to oversee what everybody does, but rather democracy works because most people, most of the time, voluntarily choose to obey the law. And in your past, most Americans attended a church or a synagogue every week, and they were taught there by people who they respected. My friend went on to say that Americans followed these rules because they had come to believe that they weren't just accountable to society, they were accountable to God. My Chinese friend heightened a vague but nagging concern I've harbored inside that as religion loses its influence over the lives of Americans, what will happen to our democracy? Where are the institutions that are going to teach the next generation of Americans that they too need to voluntarily choose to obey the laws? Because if you take away religion, you can't hire enough police.
Such a great statement, and if you would like to watch that video again, we've posted it on the Facebook page for Point of View Radio Talk Show. We also have the picture of the Ten Commandments sign we were talking about just a minute ago. But Kelly and Penna, you know that I was over in Hungary. As a matter of fact, I had a chance to hear you over there. It's kind of fun to be on the other side of the world and listen to the Friday broadcast that you did. But it is interesting to watch what's happened in Hungary, because I started going there about 15 years ago. I went over there to teach Christian ethics. They used my book on Christian ethics, and the last couple of times they've taught it without me. It makes more sense to have the author teach it out of his own book. And I've noticed a remarkable change. This is a country coming from one of the Soviet bloc countries, and this was an agency that actually developed outreach in Hungary through Germany, because the Word of Life in Germany came down to Hungary when the Berlin Wall fell and when there was an opportunity to really move into some of these countries. And they were able to take over interestingly enough, it's a castle. And it was used at the time by the Marxists to indoctrinate students into Marxism. They had these summer camps and things like that. Word of Life took it over. But one of the stipulations from the city fathers was this: you still have to keep teaching those campers. And they said, well, we're glad to do so. We have a built-in audience, but we're going to be teaching them Christian worldview. And they said, well, that's okay. And now, of course, they have a first and second year program, which is just like a Bible college. And so now, in an institution that used to be used to indoctrinate students in Marxism, they now use that institution to, of course, teach and educate and prepare the next Christian leaders for Central Europe. And so it's just an incredible thing. But as you've watched Hungary change, it's really come from darkness to light. It has one of the lowest corporate tax rates in the world, and it has allowed a lot more entrepreneurship. And so as they're looking at their country, they're saying, as I look at this country, it really is amazing. We've moved from darkness to light. But then they look at me and say, as I look at your country seems to be moving from light to darkness. And this comment by Professor Christensen about the importance of religion, I think, is part of that. Kelly, if we keep moving religion to the periphery of the society, I don't think we have the kind of country that most of us grew up in.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw that, I know I saw that video and sent it to you and some others. I mean, everybody that's responded, that has seen it, has said, wow, this is really well done, and it's very simple. It's 90 seconds long. It's a great thing for people to share so they could go to Point of View and get that and send it around. But I think most people know it's a simple concept, but they know it's true. That a representative democracy like we have only works with a certain type of people. And that's one of the problems I had with George Bush. I really like George Bush as far as he has a good heart, trying to do the right thing. But this idea that we can export democracy and Republican form of government around the world, like that the system itself just does it all, it's just not true. Anybody who understands the Judeo-Christian history of our country understands that those systems only work with a moral, and then our founders, was all these quotes from Adams and Washington, and they say this only works for, quote, a moral and religious people. And that's what this video shows. Is it says that if you don't have the self-restraining force of people of faith actually feeling a responsibility to God and therefore policing themselves, then this form of government doesn't work. Again, eventually what you get to is sort of a mobocracy where people are voting their own goods to themselves and all these. Of course, and so as you lose, or if you lose, the restraining, power of, the Bible and of Christianity, then our country is not going to survive. It just doesn't work that way, and our institutions will collapse and won't work like they were intended.
Penna?
In this video, the video part of it that people couldn't see, but as they were listening to this professor, showed churches just kind of being snuffed out of the skyline of the city. And, that's disturbing. And, you need a religious people in order for a democracy to work. And people are, as Kelly said, voting themselves goods. And we wonder when we're going to hit the tipping point where that's going to be the government that's in control and we won't be able to get rid of it. I have, just wondered what election that's actually going to happen at. And I think it's important for people of faith to work to ensure that does not happen in the next election cycle. Either the one that's taking place, soon this year, or the one in 2016 with the presidential election. We've got to make sure that we stay on this side of that tipping point, because otherwise we'll become like one of those communist socialist nations. We'll have an effective dictatorship and tyranny. So it's really an important time right now. And I think that to the extent that you can help people come to faith, that's a big part of it, because we need people to be religious and faithful.
Let me, if I can, just before we get into some other issues, because we've got a lot more to talk with Kelly, somebody has a question about the Mount Soledad cross. So let me take that one before we move on to some of these other topics. So Victor, KPDR in Oklahoma, I think you had a question about the cross, and I will put you on and give you a chance to ask it.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. I was thinking, couldn't someone who has the means and expect to be able to move that cross from there, or put it on private land where they couldn't mess with it or do anything with it, because it would be privately owned by someone that's in the military?
Sure. Let's talk about that, because that's been a big issue both in the one in the desert and as well the Mojave Desert, as well as the Mount Soledad cross. Kelly? Well,
number one, the monument's actually owned by the federal government, and the land's owned by the federal government, as well as there are contractual rights with the Mount Soledad Veterans Association. So it's, it for somebody, private entity, to come take it over or whatever would obviously be a dramatic change. And the issue is there's no need for that. That's the issue. Is we're talking about, we can't continually, what do we do when they complain about the Supreme Court having 10 Commandments in it, and the Arlington Memorial Cemetery that has a 24-foot cross, the Cross of Sacrifice. It has a 10-foot cross, the Argonne Cross. It has the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier that says known but to God. Every community that people are going into this weekend, there's those. And this is, a lot of times, it's government land. And so really what we need is a really solid decision that says there's nothing wrong with this, and we're not going to go around the country trying to find all of our religious monuments and memorials and have them torn down, or even moved to people's backyards or something. So I think we really need to win this the way it is, because we can't just move everything. And what they're trying to do is the change. What we're doing is not the change. These memorials have been up for 100 years in some cases around the country. I'm thinking of the Maryland case we have with the blade, the cross out there. And so all of a sudden they're supposedly unconstitutional. So we just need to stop these attacks. But I understand the desire of people, Victor and others, to say, let's save this one. But we're appealing, and we're gonna. If we have to go all the way to the Supreme Court, really, what we want the Supreme Court to do is to say, stop. This is over. All these attacks on veterans memorials, it's decision made, case is over, done. And that's what we want them to do, and that's what we're hoping they're going to do when we get there.
We're going to take a break, but continue some of our conversation about religious liberty a little bit longer to find out whether or not you can have a Bible study in your community, whether or not you can read a Bible in the grade school classes, and all sorts of other cases. And each one of them cause you to shake your head, but also be grateful that there's a Liberty Institute out there fighting on some of those issues. We'll take a break, and then we'll come back and also take some of your phone calls. Stay tuned.
You are listening to Point of View. For materials offered during the program, please write to Point of View, Post Office Box 30. That's Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221, zip 75221. Or call our toll-free number, 1-800-347-5151. That's 1-800-347-5151. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. Point of View will continue after this. listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Weekend edition is Memorial Day weekend. I hope you're enjoying your Memorial Day weekend. And we have around the round table Penna Dexter and Kelly Shackelford. And if you want to know more about either of them, first of all, you can go to Today on Point of View. It has the bios for both of them. And just a few minutes, those of you listening online will hear Penna Dexter's commentary. You may have already heard mine if you've been listening online, and you can find out more about Liberty Institute. So just a lot of ways in which you can find out about some of the things we're talking about. But before we get to the scandal of the Veterans Administration, and I see on my screen here a number of people want to talk about that, Kelly, finish off some of the other religious liberty issues. Can you actually bring a Bible to the public schools? Can a church have a small group Bible study in a community, or are we really kind of turning into that totalitarian state that some of those countries behind the Iron Curtain used to actually have?
Yeah, this is the thing that I find very interesting. We played that video earlier, and the whole point there was the importance of religion and people being able to be people of faith so that they would police themselves. They would have things like the Bible, and it would lead to self-restraint. And then here we go. This last week we had the fifth grader where I think we finally finished this case. We'll see. That was told he couldn't bring his Bible to school and read during the free reading time. His teacher specifically said, this is on audio tape, because she called the home, said, don't bring any of those religious books to school. And then the school, unfortunately, instead of correcting this, began to try to lie, to try to continually change the story. And then eventually, when you lie, you kind of end up stepping in it. And they did that. They eventually reverted to, well, it was only during accelerated reading they couldn't read the Bible, which, number one, wasn't true. But number two, we said, oh, so you're banning the Bible during accelerated reading? And well, it's on the approved list, so what's that about? So by the time it was done, we had to send a demand letter to get them, but they have now capitulated and said he can bring his Bible even in accelerated reading. But this is not the first one. Like the week before that was the second grader who was told she couldn't have her Bible during free reading time, and in fact, she was told to take it home and never to bring it to school again. Yes, you can read your Bible.
You're talking about a knife or something.
Yeah, and it's
kind of a weapon.
It's legal. It's literature. Yeah. You're allowed to bring, your Bible to school. You're allowed to read it at school in your free time, and that's fine. And the other one was this school district that refused to let the church. The church was saying, one of the things we need in light of exactly what we just talked about with that video, one of the things we need, the church said, is we need people to understand the Christian worldview. Because then they can apply it to all areas of their life, and they'll be better. It will be a better country. And so they said, let's use one of the schoolrooms after the school day, like all these other outside groups do, and we'll have a Christian worldview class where if any of the kids want to stay and learn Christian worldview, they can do that. Great idea, right? The school said no. We're going to let everybody else, but you can't. We're not going to allow you. You're a church, for heaven's sakes. You can't use our facilities like every other, group of citizens. So, and it wasn't just that they said no and pushed the church around for month after month after month and literally forced us to file a lawsuit and have a judge tell them in a temporary restraining order, you can't do this to the church. And the church this week went in, got the TRO, went in and started their class. So yes, and again, we look at it and we say these are crazy, but I do think there's something to this. I mean, this is the key. This is the key to our country. And so when we see these things under attack, we need to know that there's something going on here, that this is really an attack at the key point of what makes our country what it is. They want to collapse the pillars out from under us. And so the enemy certainly is going after the Bible and going after attempt to teach Christian worldview.
So some of the excuses that were given by this particular school in the Whitney ISD in Texas for not having the worldview class was that the rooms can't be used because the need for them to be available for the janitors to clean them. I mean, It's a school.
That's your best argument,
Yeah.
as I like to sometimes say. Oh, boy.
I mean, that was just one, but there were others, and they were equally vapid.
Yes.
And not important. So this is a fight worth having.
Some of the people want to know what they can do. So let me go to Louisiana this time. KPAE and Ricky. I think you are kind of asking some questions about how people can get involved. So go for it.
Okay, well, this is going to probably be the most important statement that anybody's ever called into Point of View. I've been listening to Point of View for 30-plus years.
Oh, I can't wait.
But I will show you how you can make your ministry 1,000 times more effective. I heard on your program this a couple of years ago that a senator was asking, he was getting ready to vote one way, and he said all of a sudden his constituents started calling in, and he was overwhelmed. And I remember it might have been Kerby asking or somebody on Point of View. They said, he was curious, well, man, how did you change your mind since you going to vote this way? And all of a sudden you turn. He said, we were overwhelmed with calls. And y'all asked him, well, actually, how many calls did you get? He said, 12. 12 calls made him change his mind. So if y'all gave out the numbers to all the judges and all these school board principals, if y'all would give the phone numbers over the air, I guarantee you, just like the persistent widow, the unjust judge, man, I don't care about justice, but this widow's bugging me so much, I'm going to give her what she wants. If y'all would give the phone numbers, home or the office or the courthouse phone numbers, I promise you, if just 1/10 of Point of View listeners called in for about 10 days, translate that about 100,000 calls per day, I guarantee these judges would say, man, these people, I better reverse my decision. But y'all like tigers with no teeth. I mean, y'all need to give out the phone numbers to all these egregious, I call them terrorists, all these judges and these give all these, marriage, go ahead, you get married, same-sex people, all that.
Sure. Yeah, I think we get the point. And matter of fact, we've had judges this week.
Pent-up frustration, isn't it?
Also, judges in Oregon and Pennsylvania this week on the issue of marriage. Certainly, that's a good principle. Sometimes if they won't see the light, they'll feel the heat. And
right.
There are some times, I think, Kelly, to bring out, let the dogs loose or bring out the forces and really go. But in many cases, just a demand letter makes a difference, doesn't it?
Well, sure. But I think there's an importance here because, we have to go in and do this when we have local elected officials who are insisting upon this type of activity. And you want to ask yourself, where's the community there? I mean, where's the community to say, you're doing what? Well, you're about to lose your office. And that's what's missing in a lot of these. For instance, this fifth grader who was told he couldn't bring his Bible. I mean, what's the school district done there? I mean, they've been horrible the whole time. Yet there's been no huge uprising of citizens in Miami-Dade that I know of to say, well, we're getting rid of these school board members. So there really does need to be people who, it's their representative especially, need to be calling on the phone and saying, what are you doing? And to be honest with you, that's what leads sometimes some people to run for office themselves and say, I've had enough of this. I'm going to get in there with the right kind of values and make a difference myself.
Our caller, I mean, that frustration that comes from knowing things and knowing, injustices and things that are going wrong and feeling a bit powerless to do things about it and wanting us to provide phone numbers. Well, I mean, we do have targeted issues where we provide the ability for people to contact their legislators. So we do that. We can't do that on every single thing, and Liberty Institute exists to do that on certain issues, and they need help, just financial help to get into court and to do these cases. So that's one way people can actually take action. But the other part is just what Kelly just said, and that is in your own community. That's where you can make the most impact, in your own community, in your own state. You know the players there. You can look them up in the phone book or look online and find their numbers and call them and talk to them. Those are your neighbors that live near you. And you can do it. We can't give you your phone number for your city council member or, your school board member, but you can get that easily. And you can also run for one of those positions if you've got the time and the inclination to do so. So I think his sentiment is, we can't leave that without saying, yes, you're right. Things need to be done. Some of the initiative, though, has to be taken by the actual people who are concerned.
You and I used to work with a thing called Action Lunch that was done at a local church, and I encourage churches to do that because sometimes we would encourage people to write on an issue And we would hear from legislators saying, "Oh, we heard a lot about this issue," and we'd say, "Well, how many letters did you get?" 5, like you said.
More than they normally get.
Yeah, they get 12 on it, and they're like at DEFCON 3. They're at a nuclear meltdown. So it doesn't take much. And if our listeners would get involved, and we do have a take action section there where from time to time, as we did this week, focusing on the Maryland bathroom bill, the transgender bathroom bill, and encouraging people to be involved in that. That's one of those actions. And I'm glad to give out the phone numbers when it makes some sense, but also support some of the organizations that are fighting those battles in the courts. Very important issues as well. Let's take a break. You'll if you're listening online, a chance to hear Penna Dexter's commentary right now. We'll come back and talk about the VA scandal. All that coming up right after this.
Several pro-life organizations took note earlier this month of the one-year anniversary of the first-degree murder conviction of late-term abortionist Kermit Gosnell. Dr. Gosnell was found guilty of killing babies that were still alive after botched abortions. He was also convicted of 21 felony counts of illegal late-term abortion. He is serving 3 life sentences in state prison. Some of his former employees are also doing time. Grisly as this episode was, and as much as we'd like not to think about it, pro-lifers are doing their best not to let it slip from American consciousness. This case helped paint a picture, and this picture is worth 1,000 words in favor of protecting women. The filthy and otherwise disgusting conditions in Gosnell's Philadelphia clinic have prompted the passage of laws in several states requiring that abortion facilities meet certain safety standards and mandating that abortionists have admitting privileges at local hospitals. The atrocities uncovered at that horrible clinic also tell another story. That story is that at a certain point in gestation, at least before 20 weeks, an unborn baby feels pain. Irina Grosu is director of the Center for Human Dignity at the Family Research Council. At a press conference on the one-year anniversary of Gosnell's conviction, Ms. Grosu pointed out that the babies that Gosnell brutally killed felt pain. She's referring to the little ones who didn't die when they were supposed to, but the ones that did die while still in the womb felt pain too. So, Senator Lindsey Graham has introduced the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. The bill prohibits the abortion of unborn babies after 20 weeks. That's 5 months gestation. These babies are capable of feeling the excruciating pain from abortion. Mothers considering abortion need to be informed and strongly reminded of that fact as they are making their choice. The House passed a similar measure a year ago, and several states have enacted their own laws that cut off abortions at 5 months. The Senate bill has 40 co-sponsors, but Majority Leader Harry Reid has refused to allow the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Act to come to the floor for a vote. He's protecting pro-choice senators from having to explain their position on this in an election year. He's right to worry. According to an NBC poll, 1 in 5 people who say they favor abortion rights favor these pain-capable laws. A growing body of research tells us that unborn babies feel pain at 20 weeks, probably much earlier. Medical textbooks and professional anesthesiologists generally agree that anesthesia and analgesia are warranted for fetal surgical procedures. America is one of 7 countries that permit abortion on demand after 20 weeks gestation. Joining us in this category are China and North Korea, not exactly known as champions of human rights. This is inexcusable. We have the science and the optics to ban these late-term abortions. For Point of View, I'm Penna Dexter.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
I'd like to join our conversation today, 1-800-351-1212. We'll get to some of you that have been waiting for a while, and I know a few you finally had to drop off, but I know some of you wanted to join us as we talk about the VA scandal, so if you have been waiting to do that, you can call back, because after all, this scandal is significant. 344,000 claims of veterans' care that are backed up. The fact that in order for individuals to get treatment, the words delay in treatment showed up at least 167 times. We have at least 7 states where there has been a cover-up of all of this. And this is in an agency that is so large. I got this the other day from former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. There are more people working in the Veterans Administration than there are people in the Marine Corps. And I'd say the Marine Corps is probably a little more disciplined. And so this is an agency that isn't going to be brought into tow just by firing a person here or there. Penna, we've got some very serious issues with this scandal, and all of this unfolding as we are in the Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So we've got the House who's voted on some legislation to try to remedy the situation, and then the Senate could take up the House bill. The Senate's also got its own legislation that has been proposed out there, but of course, so much good stuff dies in the United States Senate, so that's where we stand right now. And Senator John Thune made some comments about really the way the lack of seriousness with which this administration takes these huge issues sometimes. It's very disturbing. And I think that, the country is starting to get another view of it. And when it relates to the veterans and the military, I think that makes an impact on a lot of people across the nation. The disappointment that your administration is acting, almost using it. They've used it politically, but they haven't really made a difference to try to fix the situation.
This article that you're alluding to is on our website. It's the second one, The Depth of the VA Scandal. And again, this is a huge agency. 6 million veterans treated in 1,400 different venues. We're talking about clinics and hospitals and nursing homes. Half of all the physicians in America at one time or another received some of their training through the VA. This is a huge organization, and it's a very inefficient organization. There have been attempts over the years to try to get the medical records in the Defense Department seamlessly transferred over to the medical records of the VA after spending, and I'm talking about not just a few dollars, billions with a capital B, billions of dollars. They still have not been able to do that. So some of the kinds of problems that have existed with other agencies, we see there with the Veterans Administration. And Kelly, this again is a way in which we just do not seem to be treating our veterans, the people who deserve, I think, the highest honor and the best possible care, are certainly not being treated well through the Veterans Administration right now.
No, and I think that's an important point because, we look at Obamacare and what's coming with the government essentially trying to take over all the healthcare system. And, look at what's happening with the VA healthcare. And in that case, in the veterans case, there are all kinds of incentives. I think politically and otherwise, the idea of not taking care of veterans is not, there's plenty of motivation out there to do this right, and they still are just completely muffing it. And so then ask yourself, what if you're not a veteran and now the government's handling your health care, which is what's about to happen for the whole country. And it's really, I think it's kind of a hello, this is bad. This is a really bad idea. They can't handle this, and there's all kinds of incentives for them to be very careful here, and so it just tells you something about how wrong-headed and how dangerous if we can't get something done to change Obamacare, what's going to happen to everybody's health care. And it's not only what's happening to these veterans, but the cover-ups and all of that's happening. Again, this is what happens when you sort of take away people's. You're not in the free market system. You can't say, well, I'm not going to you. I'm going over here. And then all of a sudden, people start changing their behavior. But when you don't have that, when the government's controlling it all, then you're really reliant upon the government doing it well. You don't have those sort of competitive interests, to force things to be well. And so you end up with this. Again, I'm sure there's lots of very conscientious people trying to do their best. It's just government monopolies are not the best way to do things, and certainly not with something as important as healthcare. So,
sure.
This is something that I hope will get corrected, but it really is, I think, a shot across the bow for all of our healthcare in the future as well.
One of the things I've said is, of course, I don't know a lot of people that work in the Veterans Administration, a lot of good people, but you put good people in a bad system, the system wins.
That's right.
And there have been a lot of people that have had very positive experiences with the Veterans Administration. We're not saying that all of it is bad, but we are saying that some of these systemic problems aren't going to go away if you release or fire or force the resignation of one or two higher ups.
Right.
This is a bigger problem than just the
problem that everybody's talking about right now, the scandal, because deeper in that is the problem of incentive, of corrective, of cost-cutting, and much more that are going to, as you point out, surface initially with the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. Obviously, under Obamacare, the hospitals are still private, the doctors are still private. It's nothing like the VA, but it kind of moves you towards what could be a single-payer system, which would be exactly what you have right now with the VA.
You know, some people have talked about this would be a drastic solution, but it would be a free market solution, would be to more voucherize medical care for veterans and allow them to get care, but not have it done under this huge system that, you know, is moving us toward control. And, you know, since we're seeing how, you know, these flaws and these mistakes in it, I do think it's a wake-up call. I mean, President Obama was running on fixing the Veterans Administration, and yet his first action was to take over the rest of healthcare, and so and not fix the Veterans Administration. And so now we've got both problems on our hands, and we've got you know, I think the conservative side of the aisle, the free market people in the country, the thinkers, need to come up with something big to present and put out there to fix this problem and to move the healthcare system into veterans and the rest of it. Because if we don't, we're going to end up like tinkering at the edges of both of these systems, and it's going to turn into a full-on socialized system.
Let's take a phone call. We'll go to North Carolina. Paul, what would you like to share with us today?
Thank you so much for taking my call. I used to work in industrial maintenance, and we'd have preventive maintenance stuff to do throughout the day, and our supervisors mainly told us to look busy. You know, don't let the plant engineer see you not doing anything. And I think that's the mindset of this administration. Let's just look like we're doing something. We're not really trying to accomplish anything. And I think it goes back to what the president has only ever known was organizing movements to get behind, raising points to cause people to get upset, and then using that to push an agenda, not really accomplishing anything. And it's very sad, especially when it comes to veterans, which I don't know of anybody who doesn't have a veteran in their family. And I have my father and my uncles, and, you know, all of them are dependent upon this care. And it is very sad and alarming. It's just an echo that continues from this administration about not taking action. The president gave a speech about him being angry, but what's he going to do about it? You know, what are you going to do? You know, if there's nothing behind it, how are you supposed to accomplish anything?
Yeah, I certainly agree. And words are cheap, and even firing people and catching scapegoats are easy. But this is a problem that illustrates, again, when the bureaucracy gets so big, it almost becomes unmanageable. And we had Jim DeMint on recently, and he's written a book talking about the fact that you could take the largest company in the Fortune 500, and it wouldn't even be the second largest program in the government. So we have never had a government this big. And when your current president has never managed anything, and even your previous president, well, okay, managed a baseball team and an oil company. I mean, you could get the best manager in the world, but we're talking about managing a bureaucracy that is huge and unwieldy and has all these Byzantine bureaucratic rules. I just don't think it works anymore. So anyway, let's take a break. We will take some more of your calls. I suspect some of you want to talk about religious liberty. Some want to talk about the VA. Second hour today, we're going to talk also about this commentary that Penna Dexter has done on the fetal pain bill. We want to educate you about that. And we'll get into a couple of other issues. You're welcome to join us, 1-800-351-1212. If you'd like to find some of the information we've been talking about today, it's on our website, pointofview.net. We'll be back with more right after this.
Across the nation, this is Point of View. For materials offered during the broadcast, please write to Point of View, Post Office Box 30. That's Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221. Zip 75221. Or call our toll-free number, 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries and is supported by your generous tax-deductible contributions.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kerby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.
Day 2 Jesus, I love you, how I adore you. I can't stop thinking about you. Jesus, I love you, how I adore you. I can't stop thinking about you.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Second hour today, if you'd like to join us, a couple of issues we put on the table: religious liberty, as well as the Veterans Administration scandal. Those are just a few we're going to get into a little bit later this hour. A commentary that Penna Dexter has done on the fetal pain bill, and we wanted to educate you on that. See, one of our callers wants to talk about the atheist statue up there in Oklahoma. We'll get to that in a minute, but since we're talking about the VA for the moment, let's go to North Carolina and talk to Anthony. Thank you for calling today.
How you doing?
Very good. What would you like to share with us?
You know, I know we like to play partisan politics when we talk about a lot of things, but to try to put the burden of this healthcare fiasco to VA on one presidency it would be a falsehood.
I would agree. I mean, it's been going on for a long time. It's a huge bureaucracy, and it's gotten out of control long before President Obama ever came into office. But what can we do?
You know, well, it's like the whole system. I mean, everything that we do when it needs policing, we never want to put police in place to take care of it. You know, we don't want to put the proper mechanisms in place to eliminate the people that are causing the stagnation. You know, we're afraid to punish or air our dirty laundry. You know, if you've got somebody that's incompetent, and that's another thing we do, we continue to promote people who are incompetent and haven't demonstrated the ability to handle higher management.
Very good. We're having a little trouble hearing you, but his point was well taken, because we have learned, Penna, that some of the individuals who were in charge of some of this at the Veterans Administration got very generous bonuses.
Yeah, we learned that. We do have a problem with that. I think the other side of that, though, is to say if we fire one head of one agency, that fixes the problem.
Yeah.
Because it is systemic. And so we need to discuss them. And I think the blame needs to go on certain people, and also the responsibility needs to be hoisted on the people that are in power. So really to say, because I think what our caller was saying was that we were blaming the problems in the VA on one administration. We're not doing that. We're just saying it's time to now move in and take some serious steps to fix this. And right now, it's the Obama administration's the one in power. So we're calling on them. Do something.
I've just written a piece that's going to come out shortly here on all the waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicare and Medicaid. And a lot of this, again, went on long before this administration was in power and has continued on. But the point is that you really need, if you're going to get any kind of regulatory control, have a president and a Congress, and it's an election year. We don't have a president running for office, but we have 435 members of the House of Representatives, 35 Senate races, in which, if you really are serious about regulatory reform, it's going to you need almost constant attention and people with a great deal of backbone, because this bureaucracy pretty much runs itself anymore, almost without any regard to who the president is and who Congress is. And the framers, Kelly, really anticipated that we would have checks and balances, could not have imagined a bureaucracy as large as we have right now in the healthcare industry.
No, I think that's right. But let's add something. I mean, when this president ran, one of his issues was cleaning up the VA. And so, there's some responsibility there. And I think all of us are the same in that it'd be so refreshing to see a politician stand up and go, you know what? This is just bad. And I'm responsible because I'm ultimately responsible, and I'm going to get this fixed. And maybe I'm going to need, a month to study this, but I'm going to come out and tell you what we're going to do to fix it. And it's going to be very specific. It's not going to be, oh, I'm angry at these other people because they didn't handle things. I'm going to take responsibility. This is my responsibility, and I'm not just going to give you platitudes. I'm actually going to go after this thing and get this thing fixed. I think that's what America's just, thirsting for, is the partisanship and the gotcha and the I'm not responsible and all that to go away, and for people to act like grown-ups and say, you know what, I'm going to fix these problems. Our veterans deserve better than this. We're going to bring in the top minds in the country if we have to. We're going to lay it out what we're going to do, and we're going to show everybody what we're going to do, and then we're going to do it. Mm-hmm. How hard is that on any of our problems? But let's start with this one. This is very important.
This comes out of the Washington Free Beacon that Eric Shinseki, who's Secretary of Veterans Affairs, when he took office, he vowed that every disability claim would be processed within 125 days with 98% accuracy. But the backlogs just began getting worse. It took about 4 months for the VA to process a claim for disability when he was sworn in. By 2012, the average wait time was about 9 months. That is where people can die.
Well, and again,
or get a lot worse.
When you have an average wait of 160 days, and with the VA itself claiming that it has an error rate of 9%, that's a low rate.
Yeah.
You recognize that we've got some problems here. And it gets back to one of the things that former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich used to say, and that is we need to develop a 21st century kind of mindset in the bureaucracies. And the example he loves to use is that you can go to an ATM machine anywhere in the world. And I have done this in various countries around the world. And I put it in, and within seconds, it knows who I am. It figures out what it is. It provides me with the funds that I need. And if I'm in Hungary, it puts it in forints or euros, or if I'm in Japan, it's yen, or whatever it might be. I'm just figuring out within seconds, and yet here we have 160 days to approve a health benefit. And those kinds of things obviously are almost 19th century kind of bureaucratic bungling that need to be brought into the 21st century. And spending more money or hiring a few more people isn't really the way to go. And I'm afraid that's the kind of solutions we're going to hear over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and again, think of, again, this might be a little crazy, but I think it would work, or I think it would go off well. Let's say instead of what's been happening, let's say that President Obama came up to the podium for a major press conference, and standing next to him was Newt Gingrich. And President Obama said, you know what, I promised to fix this, and it's gotten worse. And, I want to apologize. And I'm going to do this. And in fact, I'm reaching out to a guy who's one of the smartest guys around, and we're going to be bipartisan. That's why I want him here. Plus, he's a brilliant guy. And Newt's going to head this thing and take it on like a tiger. That's the kind of thing.
That'd be a winner.
That's the kind of thing that Newt Gingrich would love to do too. Is tackle a problem like that and try to solve it. Bring in all the best experts. Have the analysis. But again, there are other ways. But I'm saying those kind of approaches, I think everybody would go, now I like this. So we're going after this thing. We're going to do something. It's not, let's see what I can say and maybe it'll go away, which is, typically what's going on these days. If I can talk, and then the Republicans think, oh, we got him on this one, so let's hit. And everybody's like, stop it. That's not what we're looking for. We'd like you to solve the problem for our veterans. We'd like them to have great health care, and we'd like to do what we can to fix this system. And maybe we find out, like you say, it's too big, it's not fixable. then guess what we need to learn about that, about our healthcare system. We got to make some serious changes there, and maybe we need to go back into a free market economy and with competition and the things that really work in the marketplace.
You know, if our government has any obligation at all to fulfill it's promises to those individuals, first and foremost, that served in the armed forces, and we have let them down. We talked about that in terms of religious liberty. We certainly have talked about it in terms of the VA. Let's take a break. We'll come back, and all sorts of other issues on the table. We'll get to those right after these important messages.
The Point of View Commentary with Kerby Anderson.
What happened to the word shame? Why aren't people ashamed of some of the things they do? It's a good question. Columnist John Hawkins believes that there are things that we should be ashamed of doing. He deserves accolades not only for writing the column, but also for starting with a quote from Proverbs 6. Let me comment on a few things he mentions. 2 are cultural, 2 are political. First, people should be ashamed of acting like a skank in public. Now we can think of other words to describe the behavior of singers like Madonna or Miley Cyrus, but this word is good enough to illustrate the point. Young girls who follow the fun story of Hannah Montana are treated now to a young woman who has tossed every bit of that wholesome image. I feel for mothers trying to raise daughters in this cultural rot. Second, parents should be ashamed for allowing their children to inconvenience others. You certainly know what I mean if you fly on airplanes or walk in a mall or stand next to a checkout counter in a grocery store. Screaming children with temper tantrums are on the increase. Parents seem unwilling or unable to discipline their kids. Spoiled, selfish kids apparently are running these households. Lying politicians are a third group that should be ashamed. John Hawkins reminds us that politicians have lied to voters in the past. That is no new revelation. The difference is the willingness to consider routine lying to the American public as just part of the political spin that must take place. Another political issue is the entitlement mentality of so many on welfare. John Hawkins illustrates this from a scene in the movie Cinderella Man. I've mentioned this in previous commentaries. James Braddock is forced to get welfare to feed his family. He's humiliated by the experience and eventually goes back and pays the money he received. Today, many on welfare feel no shame in staying on the dole for a lifetime. We may have lost the idea of shame, but that doesn't mean there aren't things we should be ashamed about. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Weekend edition, if you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. Penna Dexter, Kelly Shackelford. Next couple of calls want to talk about the issue of religious liberty, so let's go to South Carolina this time, WAGP. Becky, thank you for calling today.
Thank you. This is some food for thought. I just thought about, Jesus was the first one to give us a religious freedom. And I just thought, not that they could, but the Pharisees were the ones that tried to take away if the people could come and take away these monuments from us, that's just like the Pharisees coming in and trying to take away what Jesus gave our religious freedoms for us from sin. Not that they could do it, but they tried to. And where would we be if they could have done that?
Yeah.
That's the food for thought.
Very good. You know, there are some that all through history, Kelly, have wanted to take away our religious freedom, and you can think about the Stoics and Epicureans that certainly challenged Paul at Mars Hill. She talks about the Pharisees and the Sadducees and maybe even the Zealots. But more recently, because of the Enlightenment, there has been this incredible growth of those people that are atheist. And a fair number of atheists in the past used to have sort of this kind of spiritual apartheid. You have your views, I have my views. I don't agree with you, but we'll tolerate it. But the new atheists and some of these freedom from religion type of groups or American separation of church and state kind of groups are much more aggressive. And that's why we really need to support groups like you, because there isn't this sense of tolerance that, well, you can have your religious views and we'll have our atheistic views. They're saying, no, you don't have a right to your religious views, and we want to tear down all those symbols, right?
No, it's a great point, Kerby, and it's one of the reasons why I would, anybody who's out there who's listening and is not on Liberty Institute's monthly letter, so you can go to libertyinstitute.org and sign up, and if you put your address in there, you'll get a letter once a month. I'm writing about this each month, trying to update people on what's going on, and people don't understand that there's a change here. I mean, there are these groups that are now in existence in the United States, and Freedom from Religion, others, well-intentioned. They think America will be better if there wasn't religion, and that's their goal. And unfortunately, that's catching on some. Not only are we seeing it in the kind of the way the government is moving and what we're now doing. I mean, my whole life, religious freedom has been, can the government do this close to religion? Can they have a monument? Can they do this? Can they do that? If you'll watch what's going on now, it's the government is now actually forcing people to do things in violation of their religion. Obamacare cases, the Hobby Lobby case, there's a whole litany of these. So things are changing. And in that process, what is being now argued, and this is the first time in my life, and again, all Liberty Institute does is religious freedom. We're now seeing the argument that religious freedom, really, we don't need it anymore. That there are articles being written by law professors that say free speech covers it. And so we really don't need it. We might have needed it when we founded the country, but not anymore. And we're seeing justices say things in the oral argument in Hobby Lobby like, well, if you had that kind of freedom, every federal law would be in question. I mean, that's a quote from one of the justices just a few weeks ago when I was sitting there watching. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what religious freedom does. We try not to force people to violate their faith if they have some faith that you're interfering with, unless there's a compelling government reason that requires that. So there is a whole movement going on right now to literally say religious freedom is really not important anymore, and we really don't need it. And so whatever the sort of flavor of the day issue is, that should override religious freedom, because really it's kind of covered by the First Amendment free speech clause and things like that. So we kind of put it on the side. Very dangerous. I mean, in the opposite of this is, of course, what the founder said. Religious freedom is our first freedom, because if you don't have religious freedom, you won't have any freedom. Because if the government can intervene between you and your conscience and God, then really there's no greater power they could have. And when they take that, they will take it all. And so it's really, I think, the battle of the next decade is preserving religious freedom, which is why people got on boats and came to this country. But it is really under attack, and people don't know that. That's why these memorials are under attack. That's why we're seeing what we're seeing, because of exactly what you described.
I think one of the big weapons to destroy religious liberty is this attack on marriage. And, talk about the issue of the day. I mean, this is the issue of the day. And, it's sort of a false decision to make between compassion for a certain group of people and religious liberty. And it's being used to destroy religious liberty. If we allow it to, it will destroy religious liberty. And another point to be made on this, I think, is when you look at other countries, like in China, you read that China is got the fastest growing Christian population, and that it could be the biggest Christian nation, in a few years and all of that. A lot of people becoming Christians, but still, you can't call that a Christian nation because they're not allowed. I mean, you have perhaps freedom of worship in a church. Maybe you would have that. You don't even have that there. But if you had that, that would be one thing. But you don't have freedom to live your life according to your Christian faith. And we're losing that here unless we protect it.
You know, one of the things I wrote in a commentary next week is all the various careers that Christians now should actually avoid. I got the idea originally by looking at an AFA Action post, because I said, well, you know, Christian want to be a photographer? Well, what about Elaine Hugan in New Mexico and actually fined for declining to photograph a same-sex lesbian commitment ceremony? Oh, you want to be a baker? Well, how about the baker in Oregon facing both civil and criminal penalties and jail time because, in this case, he declined to bake a cake for a gay wedding? How about being a florist? I don't know if I want to be a florist either, because the Attorney General in Washington is suing a Christian florist right now for, again, the same reason, not providing flowers for a gay wedding. Well, how about the hospitality arena? Well, you might not want to be an innkeeper, because in Vermont, a Wildflower Inn is fined $30,000 and forced to shut down. It's and I go on and on and on and on. If people think that this does not affect their livelihood and their Christian convictions, it certainly does, Kelly.
Well, I mean, all you have to do is look at what happened with the Benham brothers that were about to go on HGTV. It just shows you the extremity of what the other side would like to do, which is really take away people's complete freedom if they disagree with them, it just goes against everything this country was based upon. I mean, they not only got them kicked off their show, kicked off HGTV.
Flipping houses, yeah.
Not because of anything to do with the show, but because they're bigots against them because of their beliefs. How many of us as Christians watch people on TV that we totally disagree with in their life, but we show the tolerance and grace to say, well, you know, this is not what they're promoting on this show. But it's evidently okay to do that right now against Christians. It's wrong. But that was wrong. But the next step was the step that to me was just beyond anything we could ever imagine, which is the bank came to them and said, we're gonna stop all of your funding, all of your loans, we're going to basically destroy you because of anything they did with their banking? No, because they're unpopular. They got kicked off a TV show because of their religious beliefs. So you can see how dangerous. If you think, well, it wouldn't affect me. Well, how about if they come and just destroy your business? The banks all dry up your funding. I mean, you can name the issue. This is about destroying people who disagree with you. That should never be legal in this country. It isn't legal in this country. We have religious freedom in the workplace. We have laws against religious discrimination, including federal laws. And so all of this stuff that is going on is against the law, and we're filing lawsuits on those things. Craig James is an example, and Hobby Lobby's fighting for their religious freedom. So all these people are fighting this, but people need to understand this is not a, oh boy, that's something that's going to hit somebody else, and I don't really have to worry about this. Well, do you work? Do you feed your family? Then guess what? You're now in the crosshairs. So you better step into the game and realize that you want to stand for freedom. And by that I mean freedom of people who disagree with us. That's fine. But that's what the country's about, not this sort of a, let's see if we can destroy people who have wrong religious beliefs under current political correctness.
If you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. KCTA in Texas. John, thank you for calling today.
Hey, guys. I wanted to just on this Memorial Day weekend, thank you guys in behalf of all of your listeners out there for Point of View for doing an excellent job, a very taxing but yet exuberant job. And you guys come in with no attitude. You always have a right spirit. You bring on the major topics. You guys are so well commended by me and everyone that listens here. We appreciate your station and what you're doing, and we want you to be encouraged and to continue going on, bringing us the things that we need to hear. When I finally got the courage to call in one day, I walked away so rejoicing because it allowed me to exercise my free speech, and it did something to me inside. It broke me, it humbled me to realize that we're all together in this. And I want you to realize, too, that I want to give a shout-out to the Supreme Court today, because I know when I came to accept the Lord as my Savior, I looked up the Greek. There was supreme ruler. And the Supreme Court knows that they have a supreme ruler. The supreme God over us all is watching over the Supreme Court. And he is the final say. He is the one who puts the stamp of approval upon his word and his alone. And I know that you have his approval today. I want to thank you, all the veterans, everyone. I hope you come back Monday all fired up so I can listen to you again.
For materials offered during the program, please write to Point of View, Post Office Box 30. That's Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221, zip 75221. Or call our toll-free number, 1-800-347-5151. That's 1-800-347-5151. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. Point of View will continue after this. You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Final half hour, weekend edition. Penna Dexter, Kelly Shackelford. We'll take a few more phone calls and then get into a couple of other issues. But let's head up to Ohio first. Nancy, thank you for calling us today.
Oh, hi. I'm a lady truck driver, but I'm very involved with ACLJ and different, Christian organizations, in fact, AFR too. But what I wanted to bring up, I was recently in Oklahoma City, and on the 5 o'clock news, they had the statue in front of the state building with the Ten Commandments, and then the devil with the child, a little boy and a little girl on each side of the devil. And I got a real problem with that, with Oral Roberts University right down the road in Tulsa. All the Christian leaders, the preachers, the ones that are out there hopefully telling people about the consequences and the judgment that's going to come on this nation. You know what I'm talking about?
Sure.
Mr. Anderson? I mean, that's why our founding fathers were so clearly insistent upon us being able to pray and do what we have to do to recognize our power comes from above, and the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Well, and a lot of people, I think the atheist statue was intentionally offensive just to rattle everybody's cages. Kelly, is there really anything we can do about that? Probably not.
Well, it's not up there. I mean, people can carry a sandwich board with something that's offensive and walk around and stand next to it, something. What's important to know, and I don't know if it was clear from what you were listening to on the radio, is there is a Ten Commandments monument there. We actually are defending the monument. It's the state of Oklahoma, the Attorney General's office, and Liberty Institute are both on the pleadings defending the monument. They have a monument. Their monument's constitutional. It's okay to have Ten Commandments monuments. The Supreme Court's already really dealt with this issue. But that doesn't mean that everybody else can come put up a monument. So there is no atheist monument there. Somebody, could come out and put up their own display with them, and then when they go to sleep, they got to take it back with them. But there's not like a
permanent one.
Yeah, and so that's just free speech. And we all agree with that. If somebody wants to go out and say something against the Ten Commandments or spout something different, there's actually been a case on this, went all the way to the Supreme Court. It's a kind of another, I think, kind of poke you in the eye thing.
The
it's
Colorado one? Yeah.
It's a religion called Summum.
Yes,
and they have their, what is it, I think they're 10 or 7 aphorisms.
Yeah.
And one of them is vibration. Like that's one of the commandments.
And they wanted to have that on federal property.
And they said, hey,
property.
there's a 10 Commandments here. We have a right to our monument. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And they said, no, you don't. You don't have a right to that. I mean, if that were true, then, right next to the Vietnam Wall, there'd be a right to put one up of somebody spitting on the soldiers. The government has a right to put up monuments to things they think are important. And we all vote for that, and eventually, there's a right of every citizen to disagree with it, to speak out, but they don't have a right to, tell the government which monuments they can put up. So it's been something that's been decided. This is a kind of poke you in the eye thing, but I do want people to understand, in Oklahoma and in a lot of states, there's a Ten Commandments monument. There isn't an atheist monument. And again, you'd have a hard time connecting that to the history and traditions of establishing the country like the Ten Commandments.
Let's go to one more question for Kelly, and this is from Pam in Georgia. Wanted to ask a little bit more about what Liberty Institute might do. So, Pam, go for it.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. I'm just wondering, when Liberty Institute goes after these people that are clearly in the wrong and violating Christian civil rights, do you go after punitive charges to sort of be like a deterrent against more of this activity? It just seems like it keeps getting more and more that's happening. I'll take your answer off the air.
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. Unfortunately, constitutional rights are somewhat intrinsic, right? I mean, what's your free speech worth, right? I mean, it's invaluable. And so the way the courts have kind of dealt with that is they don't really allow damages. They'll they'll allow what's called nominal damages, where you get $100. Just but it's not like, well, that's worth $1 million because there's just no way to put a value on it. So they don't allow the kind of like if somebody came and broke your arm, you could actually sue and. The medical, the pain and suffering, the loss of work. I mean, there are things you can track that to, and then you could add punitives onto that for the extra egregiousness of their behavior. Problem is, none of that really fits exactly when it comes to our kind of cases. Now, in very, very rare cases, when people just intentionally violate the Constitution in an extreme way, you can get some punitives, but it's very rare. So really the thing that punishes in those suits is that the way it works under our law is when a citizen has their rights violated under the Constitution and they bring a lawsuit, we have created statutes that allow them to recover their attorney's fees because we want to encourage any citizen whose constitutional rights are violated to be able to find an attorney who can then bring their case and they can have that right vindicated, really on behalf of all of us. That is what punishes. When the school district tells this little girl they can't pray over their meal, and they have to fight and they win, and then at the end they have to pay $200,000 in attorney's fees to the attorney who donated his time for the young girl. There's a punitive measure, but I really think the problem with that is the person who did it probably isn't paying. It's probably the taxpayers. Yeah. So I really think the ultimate answer to what she's asking, and this is something that really isn't talked about much, but it really should be, is there's a doctrine that has been slipped into the law, and it was never really sort of written in the law. It was judges who made this, called immunity. Yeah. And that is that government officials have immunity from lawsuit unless the government gives you permission to sue them. And it really, I think, is a horrible idea, and it leads to a lack of accountability. So, for instance, if you slip and fall on the ice in front of the grocery store, you can sue the grocery store for not taking care of the entrance to the grocery store. But if you do that in front of the post office or, the federal government, you actually have to get their permission in order to sue them. And they can say, no, we're not going to allow you. We've got all this Tort Claims Act and everything else. I think that's wrong because I think if people were personally liable for when they did things, I think they would be more responsible. I think that's the way all of us work. And people say, well, but we want our government to be free of, not have to worry about those things. And my doctor shouldn't. The doctor can be sued. They have to worry about those things. I think all of us should be accountable for our actions, but then people would pay personally, and I think you would see a lot of this behavior cleaned up.
I think back to one case we discussed in Florida, in Broward County, and that teacher who wouldn't let the young man bring the Bible and read during free reading time. And we played the audio of her and the voice message she left for his dad, this boy's dad, and that kind of attitude about, bringing a Bible. I mean, I think that's the kind of thing that, she probably feels very immune to getting in trouble for that. But that is, that's just egregious. And it was shocking to me, really, how much hostility to the Bible there was. And, it's happened in a lot of other liberties and other cases. So, they almost feel like they're above the law, I think.
Yeah, well, between immunity of a government official and then tenure that you have at a school, you really can feel that you're pretty much bulletproof. So those are a couple of issues we've put on the table, but in just a minute, people are going to have, once again, a chance to hear your commentary on the fetal pain bill. And I wanted to have you maybe explain that a little bit, and then for those that would like to listen, you can just go online because we do play it at the quarter to the top of the hour, but it's an important issue that a lot of our listeners need to know about. So tell us what we need to know.
Well, we've talked about this on Point of View. The reason I wanted to talk about it right now is because we just passed this 1-year anniversary of the conviction of Kermit Gosnell, that abortionist, and with grisly conditions in his clinic and all of that. And so it's time, I think, for us to pass another piece of legislation federally. Many states have already passed this because a picture is worth 1,000 words. Mm-hmm. And when you think about the pain that child feels in the womb at 5 months, if they're aborted at that stage, which is 20 weeks, I mean, that is a big a deterrent to abortion. I think for a mother, an abortion-minded woman, understanding that her baby feels pain, it's just it's helpful. And I think we can get this passed because of that picture, that word picture. So that there's been an effort to do this. And as a matter of fact, the House of Representatives has passed this pain. Guess who will not bring it to the floor for a vote? It would probably actually pass, because right here in an election year, we're looking at a country that's more pro-life now. People would be inclined to support this bill. But Harry Reid does not want his people running for the U.S. Senate to have to deal with this issue in their campaign, so he's keeping it out. So that's what I tried to write about and talk about in this particular commentary. And this would be a time when you could actually contact your U.S. Senator to ask them to support pain-capable legislation that would prevent abortion after 5 months.
So we can hear this commentary, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about it and take some more phone calls right after this.
Several pro-life organizations took note earlier this month of the one-year anniversary of the first-degree murder conviction of late-term abortionist Kermit Gosnell. Dr. Gosnell was found guilty of killing babies that were still alive after botched abortions. He was also convicted of 21 felony counts of illegal late-term abortion. He is serving 3 life sentences in state prison. Some of his former employees are also doing time. Grisly as this episode was, and as much as we'd like not to think about it, pro-lifers are doing their best not to let it slip from American consciousness. This case helped paint a picture, and this picture is worth 1,000 words in favor of protecting women. The filthy and otherwise disgusting conditions in Gosnell's Philadelphia clinic have prompted the passage of laws in several states requiring that abortion facilities meet certain safety standards and mandating that abortionists have admitting privileges at local hospitals. The atrocities uncovered at that horrible clinic also tell another story. That story is that at a certain point in gestation, at least before 20 weeks, an unborn baby feels pain. Irina Grosu is director of the Center for Human Dignity at the Family Research Council. At a press conference on the one-year anniversary of Gosnell's conviction, Ms. Grosu pointed out that the babies that Gosnell brutally killed felt pain. She's referring to the little ones who didn't die when they were supposed to, but the ones that did die while still in the womb felt pain too. So, Senator Lindsey Graham has introduced the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. The bill prohibits the abortion of unborn babies after 20 weeks. That's 5 months gestation. These babies are capable of feeling the excruciating pain from abortion. Mothers considering abortion need to be informed and strongly reminded of that fact as they are making their choice. The House passed a similar measure a year ago, and several states have enacted their own laws that cut off abortions at 5 months. The Senate bill has 40 co-sponsors, but Majority Leader Harry Reid has refused to allow the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Act to come to the floor for a vote. He's protecting pro-choice senators from having to explain their position on this in an election year. He's right to worry. According to an NBC poll, 1 in 5 people who say they favor abortion rights favor these pain-capable laws. A growing body of research tells us that unborn babies feel pain at 20 weeks, probably much earlier. Medical textbooks and professional anesthesiologists generally agree that anesthesia and analgesia are warranted for fetal surgical procedures. America is one of 7 countries that permit abortion on demand after 20 weeks gestation. Joining us in this category are China and North Korea, not exactly known as champions of human rights. This is inexcusable. We have the science and the optics to ban these late-term abortions. For Point of View, I'm Penna Dexter.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Talking at the moment about this idea of a fetal pain bill, and if you had a chance to listen to it online, you certainly can. Let me also mention you can go to the Point of View homepage, and you can click on commentary and read it, or you can listen to it. We have that opportunity. We also have a link on the Facebook page. So if you did not have a chance to hear it, that we actually play it twice on Friday. You can find out a little bit more. And Penna, this is sort of an action item because we recognize it might be very difficult to get the Senate to vote on this, but it's still worth telling your 2 senators from your state that you think that this is a bill that should be voted on, and tell them that you believe that this is an issue that deserves the American people's attention and the attention of the United States Senate.
It should be an issue that's discussed on the campaign trail in those Senate races that are taking place. And that the way that will happen is if people let their senators know they care about it.
Yes. So again, that is on our website, pointofview.net, and we only have a few minutes left. And I thought we are in the midst of an election year, and I want to turn to Kelly for just a minute, but I want to get Penna's comments as well, how important these elections are. Some individuals are just now going to vote. Others are in the midst of maybe some of the various follow-up elections and those kinds of things, because some individuals have voted, others are going to vote. But everybody gets to vote in November. And when we talk about 435 members of the House of Representatives, 35 Senate races, and then you add to it all the state legislative races, the governor's races, somebody estimated that there may be from Congress all the way to dog catcher, almost 30,000 elections that are taking place in America. We as Christians better not squander that opportunity, should we, Kelly?
Well, absolutely. I mean, this is about the future, and it's about the things we talked about, things like religious freedom. These senators will be voting on who the next Supreme Court justice is. Look at some of these decisions. Second Amendment. Do you have a right individually to own a firearm? 5-4. The Mojave Desert Cross case, which was actually covered in a bag after being up for 70 years at a veteran memorial. Do you cover all the crosses with bags? 5-4. We could just keep going, right? A long list of these.
The prayer case that was just decided was 5-4.
Yeah. Can you even have prayer before governments like the founders did from the very beginning? 5-4. So these next senators are going to decide who the next justice is. That's just one issue, right? This is about the future of our country. And really, this is one of those midterm elections. So it really is a test on, and everybody's watching, all the elected officials, what is the reaction of the country to how things are going under the current leadership? And so if the answer is, well, it's okay, then, you can pretty much guarantee that nothing's going to change. If it's like, we've got to send a message things are going to change, then you see changes and you see people begin to reform their policies to change, to do things differently. So it's really important. And, certainly as Christians, if we don't vote, then other people with vote who don't know what Christians know about the truth and about what is redeeming and about what is good, not only for themselves but for others, what principles God lays in place. You can't break God's standard. You can only break yourself against it. And so to the extent we can get those standards of truth put in place, it blesses everyone. But, if Christians don't go and vote, then those values don't get in the voting booth. They don't get in office. They don't get into policies. The people that are picked don't have those values, and you end up with a country that doesn't have those values. And so it's really important that people take that responsibility very seriously. And right now, it depends on your state. Right now is the key time for the quality of the candidate. Typically people are like one party or the other, but when you decide within the party which candidate, now you're going to find out whether you're, is it somebody, you get a chance to really pick somebody who's really strong with your issues, and you can make all the difference in these primary elections.
I think it's the stewardship of the Christian, the believer in America, that we would vote, that we would use that precious right that we have. And, a lot of people will say, we need to get everybody voting. We need to increase the participation in the elections. And, that's fine. But really, we need the people that understand worldview and a Christian worldview, that understand how these things work, that understand how these conservative and Christian principles operate in a free society and how they're good for the culture, and how we protect things like the sanctity of life, the sanctity of marriage, our religious liberty, our free market economy, all of these things. The people that understand those things are the people that should be voting. The people that look in and read and keep up with it. If you do that, if you listen to Point of View, you are one of those people, and you should be voting. And I also believe if you're a pastor or a religious leader in any way, shape, or form, you should be encouraging the people under you. Help them to understand about voting. You don't have to tell them who to vote for, but you can give them a lot of information short of that. You can tell them who to vote for if you want to, actually, but you don't have to. Just teach them well and teach them that they ought to exercise their right to vote.
One of the things we've posted again is the piece that Kelly's put together called Churches and Elections, and it has 2 things churches may not do. Endorse or oppose a particular candidate. The church couldn't do that, but the individual can. Mm-hmm. Number 2, contribute to or raise money for a candidate. And I don't know of any church that has ever raised money for a candidate. And then you have a long list that kind of goes down to the end of the page of all the things churches can do. So if you find yourself saying, well, can I as a pastor speak to that issue? Can we really have a voter's guide in the foyer of the church? All of that is on our website called Churches and Elections, and we have that posted. And Kelly, you've put that together because a lot of people don't educate their congregation because they don't know what their religious liberty rights are.
Yeah, and what's the job of the pastor? I mean, if I look in Ephesians 4 where it says, equip the saints. The whole idea is for the church to equip the saints to go and represent Christ in all these different areas of society. That includes in the voting booth. So one of the jobs of a pastor in a church is to help explain to their congregation about their stewardship responsibility and to take those biblical values into the voting booth. I think most people know they're supposed to represent Christ. They're supposed to represent Jesus. They're little Jesus, right? Mm-hmm. That includes in the voting booth. That's sometimes people just, I don't know, for some reason they don't make that connection. And so when you do, you can help redeem the culture by supporting those kinds of things that the Lord would want you to support. So, I mean, people need to, and look, there's voters' guides. I don't care what state you're in. I don't care where you are. There are voters' guides about the, you might say, well, I just don't know any of these candidates. It's real easy to get a voters' guide that tells you, okay, here is what these candidates say their positions are. Here's their record. Here's their background. I think of American Family Association has a national voters guide. I know in Texas there's the freevotersguide.com. But they're in every state. And people can get that information, and you can carry that right in with you if you need to. So there really isn't a reason for people to not be registered and to not vote. And I would say that to people now. Maybe your election's not coming up for a while or whatever. Are you registered? Did you move? Make sure you're registered. I mean, it's real easy. You can pick up a voter registration little card at the post office, or you can even print one out online and put them in the mail. It's easy to do, but make sure that you are doing your responsibility as a citizen, because it really does affect, lives all over the country based upon whether Christians actually go and carry those values into the voting booth and make sure that those then permeate society and affect people's lives.
If nothing else, get those voter guides, and we've in the past made links and provided links to that, because Kelly, as you and I have said, and I think that when we had Ken Paxton here the other day, he said the same thing. Right now, everybody's running as a conservative, but that doesn't mean anything. So see how they vote. And there are lots of those voter guides. We'll have some of those links to some of those organizations, but they're easy to find with a Google search, because after all, Google knows all. So it'll find you for some of those. And just a great way to make sure that you are registered to vote and that you vote intelligently. And one last point, bring some other like-minded people with you to the polls, because you will have a disproportionate impact, because especially in this off-year election year, a lot of people won't vote, so that means your vote counts a lot more. So I want to wish everybody a great Memorial Day weekend. My commentary on Monday gives you some suggestions on what you could do on Memorial Day, and it's more than just eating hot dogs and going on picnics. There are some things that I think you can and should do to honor those who paid the ultimate price. And we started by talking about the history of Memorial Day, and I would encourage you to educate yourself, educate your children and grandchildren about those that have served. We've learned a little bit today that we haven't always treated those who took up the arms for us in a good way. Let's honor them as best as we can. Andrew and Catherine and Carol, thank you for their help. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday.
You have been listening to Point of View. For materials offered on the program, please write to Point of View, Post Office Box 30. That's Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221. Zip 75221. Or call our toll-free number 1-800-347-5151. That's 1-800-347-5151.
Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries and is supported by your generous tax-deductible contributions.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kerby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.